Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 285th ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the MSP studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing great, Cameron. I had a fun thing happen today.
Okay.
I was having lunch
Oh, yeah?
with some folks from work, just having a nice time.
Yes.
I just happened to look out the window. Of this restaurant, and I see none other than producer Cameron just walking down the sidewalk,
Just waltzing.
just bundled up like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
It's
Chilly
cold.
out.
He's
Yeah.
a bundler.
It's cold outside, and he was just walking by.
Yeah.
And so I immediately, of course, get out my phone. I'm like snapping pictures of him.
Yes.
To send it to the group chat,
Mm-hmm.
and all my coworkers were wondering what I was doing. I let them know.
Yeah.
It made sense then, but I mean, what a glorious surprise! Just seeing your own good friend and
Out in the
fellow Mizzou
wild.
fan, producer, just walking by
Yeah.
Out in the wild.
out in the wild.
Yeah. You were bundled up. Were you a little bit chilly out there?
Yeah, I was walking for lunch. So
Hmm.
when it's cold now, not afraid to bundle up. I used to be like, it's not cool to wear a big coat.
Okay.
Don't care.
Puffy coat,
You look great.
Yep.
gloves,
Yep.
layered up,
Cover everything possible.
coveralls. That's the next step.
Wow.
Next step is just wear coveralls everywhere. What a great thing to make you great.
Yeah.
Wow.
What a surprise that was.
Yeah.
Pleasant surprise.
I'm just gonna have to randomly be downtown sometimes just on the chance encounter.
I know. I feel like I see Kyle more than anybody else, randomly during the day because we are close enough in proximity.
Out and about.
Yeah.
I used to see you on the way to work a little bit more than I have lately. Snag a couple pictures of Kyle in the car.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'm gonna change topics here a little bit. Did you, Kyle, see all the hubbub about the Wake Forest court storming?
Oh yeah.
Do you
Couldn't miss it.
Do you have a hot take on that? I thought maybe we could producer Cameron hasn't seen any of this, so we could set the stage for him and let him decide. Let him be the judge
That sounds
on what should happen.
Mizzou down by 1.
Mizzou down by 1. But yeah, also, by the way, we're recording this while Missouri basketball is playing Florida, and it's the second half. We'll maybe watch it at some point if it really is coming down to it. Producer Cameron, do you have the video that Kyle sent you of the court storming?
Yeah.
So, Duke star Kyle Filipowski gets injured in the court storming. And now everybody's trying to decide what to do about court stormings. I feel like this happens maybe once every other year or so, earlier in the Iowa women's game, Caitlin Clark ran into somebody or got ran into, and I can't even remember what ended up happening with that. But nothing.
Yeah. They were really storming the court. Wake Forest. They were sprinting
Yes.
on the court.
Yes. And I feel like when I first saw it, I was like, yikes, my first reaction was like, this is probably the end of court storming, because one of the highest profile players of one of the highest profile teams in college basketball legitimately gets hurt by a student running on the court. That's probably going to be the end of it. But then some more angles came out, and some stuff was a little bit more questionable. And now I'm not really sure how I feel.
Yeah, I don't either. Definitely, I don't know. You can take it anyway, but it's probably I can see how it could be dangerous. I can see how
Yes.
people would have that opinion, but I am personally of the mindset that it's probably fine to continue, and I'm not bothered by it.
My question for you, producer Cameron, is does he or does he not stick his leg out and
This is the first time that I've looked at either of these angles, the broadcast and the top down, and it definitely seems like he tries to
when that angle came out is
initiate some contact.
yeah, he's potentially tripping this kid, and then it turns into a whole thing, and now he's got to save face by limping off. However,
He is playing tonight.
yes,
He's not actually injured.
Right. But to his credit, like they are absolutely sprinting and he's got long legs. His leg gets in the way. But he's like looking at whoever he comes
He wasn't
in.
trying to avoid.
I would
kid.
agree.
I agree with that.
But regardless, it feels like, can we not just get on the same page here all across college basketball and fans / students, whoever, just wait a second. Give us 2 seconds to get the other team out of here.
Yes.
And then go crazy.
I feel like that was like the uniqueness of this court storming. Like I said, they were truly sprinting.
Yes.
And they got on the court so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. It's like you're being held back till the buzzer sounds and then it's go. But
I agree. That's probably like where we meet in the middle is like court storming's great. Incredible tradition. It's fun. It's unique. You probably don't get to do it very often. If you're storming the court, that means something very unique happened.
yes.
But yeah, there's got to be like a little buffer period where
I saw somebody saying that earlier in this season, or maybe it's like a regular thing they do, but like UConn, I can't remember who it was. Somebody was saying there is a team that has like procedure for it.
Oh, really?
Where they like rope off the visiting bench and they're just like ready to go in case something happens. And it doesn't feel that hard to implement something like that. Now, there is another solution that Jay Billis threw out, and he said you lock the doors to the arena, trap all the students inside, and, quote, just say you're all detained and give them all citations or arrest them if you want to. Then court stormings will stop the next day. There's no accountability for this. The fans feel like it's an entitlement, and the universities like it. And the truth is, the media like it, he said. We like it, the media. That's all true, I guess. But what do you think about his idea of just arresting everybody that steps foot on the court in like everybody get in a single file line and take your citation on the way out?
Yeah, I think that's probably the worst idea I've heard so far. I just think trying to detain like anywhere from 10 to 20,000 people who are very emotional, and a lot of which are college students, is a really, really bad idea that actually increases the safety risks tenfold because now you're going to have a riot on your hands,
right.
And you're going to have all these little people just scurrying, trying to find any exit they can in the bowels of the stadiums,
yes.
and like actually going, into locker room territory.
Yes.
And
trying to
stuff
climb out windows.
Yeah, that's a terrible idea.
Now, maybe entertaining to see happen. Like keep the cameras rolling.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll go for that.
Same.
But I'd like to see him sitting at him calling a game where this happens.
Yeah. Well,
and
keep
then
in
they
mind,
just go into lockdown.
He did play at Duke,
True.
so he's biased.
Yeah. Checkmate. Opinion disregarded. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the whole court storming thing. Producer Cameron says he tried to trip the guy, and that's just karma.
I stand by it.
What else are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about spring football. We might talk about this basketball team if they get close in this Florida game. Spring football is starting, and we thought, in addition to talking about spring ball, we're going to go back. This was a suggestion on YouTube from Barb Douglas 598 in a comment, suggested that we go back to 2019 when Coach Drinkwitz was hired and look at the other candidates that were on hot lists and stuff for the coaching vacancy and see what ended up with some of those coaches. Where are they now?
Did Mizzou make the right decision?
Exactly. So we're going to do that today. Before we do any of that, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, leave us a review wherever you listen to us, and you can support us directly on Patreon, patreon.com/Missouri Sports Pod. Spring football starting, Kyle. Does that get you excited?
It gets me excited. It's turning to a new calendar year, kind of resetting with new players. We got the new freshmen coming in. Well, some of the new freshmen, the spring enrollees. You got the transfers out there. Running plays and getting in there on the highlights and interacting with the media and stuff. So yeah, it's kind of an exciting time to see what's next.
Yeah, I've got a list of early enrollees here that are a part of spring practices. 4 offensive linemen, Talon Chandler, Caleb Pyfrom, Ryan Justice, and Javen Richardson. Quarterback Aiden Glover, linebacker Brian Huff, defensive backs Cameron Keys and Trajan Greco. So good list there, I think, of early enrollees who are starting spring practice. What jumps out to me, though, is quarterback Aiden Glover, because with injuries and stuff now, he is going to get some pretty decent reps in spring, I would say.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. And, it sounds like, at least the way Missouri's doing spring ball, it's, heavy on individual development, a lot of weightlifting and a lot of, just individual drill stuff, less like schematic stuff, like learning the new scheme and stuff. So that's probably more of like a summer thing. But yeah, to get some of the freshmen and the JUCO guys in here and kind of start conditioning and all that stuff. It's interesting. I feel like Coach Drinkwitz brought that up in some of his halftime hype speeches to the team and stuff, like during the season or during the bowl game and stuff like that. He would say, think back to spring ball, think back to summer workouts where you're up at 6 a.m. running, bleachers and all this stuff. Like all of those things are adding up to this moment. That's why we've been doing all that stuff for literally months leading up to this moment. So it kind of all starts now.
And it's got to be helpful to him now being able to point back to that. Not he even said, no pats on the back about last year's performance. He said, I don't think anybody is sitting around staring at the Cotton Bowl trophy, which credit to all of them, because that's exactly what I would be doing, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice though, even though they're not exactly, patting themselves on the back for last year, it's a new year. They have results to point to and be like, again, we're putting in the work now to accomplish something like this again. On top of the new players, we also have new defensive coordinator Corey Batoon out there figuring stuff out on defense. It's pretty well known at this point. I can't remember who came out and said it, but they're not trying to introduce a new scheme defensively. Actually, Coach Batoon is learning last year's scheme and then just adapting that into his style, adding his unique wrinkles to what was already in place. I don't know how unique that is, but that's basically the same thing that was said going from Steve Wilkes to, what's his name?
Blake Baker.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does feel like Missouri made the hire, and I don't know if this was the goal from the beginning, but Missouri made the hire where they're able to do that a little bit. They didn't make the huge big name splash hire, because I think if they do that, there's a pretty good chance that person wants to come in and install their own defense. But a guy that has really good experience, but maybe wasn't the splash hire, I think that maybe affords the ability to kind of guide that process a little bit more. Say we're coming off this great defense. Let's kind of try to keep that flavor a little bit, and then as we go, you can add some of your own wrinkles in. But yeah, it does sound like we're still going to be running a lot of 4-2-5, kind of focusing on havoc plays and stuff like that. So I thought Corey Batoon seems like a very wise coach. He's he's 55 years old. He's been coaching for a long time, but it doesn't he still has good energy. He seems very well spoken, and I'm excited to see what he brings.
He's got his face makes me think of an actor or something. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but he looks like he could be playing the I don't know, the wise, teacher of a young hotshot detective or somebody. I don't know.
Sounds like a good movie.
That's what came into my mind. He also specifically talked about the culture, the Mizzou football culture that Coach Drink has, brought to the program, and how for Coach Batoon, sort of getting used to things. He said there's no egos, and it's just a tight-knit group, and that's all stuff we kind of heard last year, and we'd see that echoed in player interviews and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, it just feels really good for a new coach to come in and feel like things are running smoothly, and you can just kind of plug in and get to work. Let's see, a couple other notes from early spring practices. I saw there was a practice players of the day announced, and Brady Cook and Connor Tollison made that list, as well as Jamarion Wayne, who was listed at defensive back, which maybe is like his third position now he's been listed at in his time at Mizzou.
Yeah, Jamarion Wayne came in from high school as a wide receiver. He was moved to safety. He was moved back to wide receiver, and now he is now playing cornerback. So just a good athlete, I guess. Just
Apparently.
willing to adapt every single year.
Yeah.
Doing something new.
I mean, he should know the offense and defense inside and out at this point.
It's going to be a good 7-on-7 player to draft.
That's a good point. I was also thinking about the new college football video game. Maybe opportunity to line him up on both sides of the ball.
Oh, yeah.
And then the last guy that got practice player of the day was Darius Smith, and he also earned his jersey number 19. So that is actually, I mean, that may be the best thing I've heard from spring practice so far. It's very early in the process, but that speaks to him being able to come in and contribute right away.
Yeah.
And hopefully keep things rolling on the defensive line.
For sure.
And Coach did shout out Caden Green and said that he'll be playing left tackle on the offensive line. And Coach said he enjoys seeing all the talk about Caden Green on Twitter, which we have contributed to. And
Yeah, we're in the conversation.
yeah. Anything else about spring practice, you think?
Spring game March 18th.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Seems early. It was early last year,
Yeah.
and it was cold, so they didn't learn their lesson, but
Right.
that's all right.
Will they do it indoors this year?
I don't know.
Yeah. So Coach Drink, obviously coming off a spectacular season, but there was no guarantee that Eli Drinkwitz was going to be the head coach of Mizzou football going back to 2019 when Missouri moved on from Barry Odom. There was a coaching search. Feels like, going back in my mind, that it dragged on a little bit, and there were some big names that it seemed there were some names out there that were attractive that Mizzou seemingly had no shot at.
Took some weird turns.
Yes. So, like I said, YouTube user Barb Douglas 598 suggested that we go back and take a look at those coaches that could have been Mizzou head coach, and we'll see if we think the university made the right decision. It'd be pretty tough to claim that they didn't at this point.
Yeah.
But we'll see. A couple names that I wanted to start out with that clearly I think would have been good hires and have had success where they are at programs that are nationally recognized brands. First two on my list are Steve Sarkisian and Mike Norvell. Both guys that I think were like at the top of my list, but at the time I thought probably not realistic. Maybe there's a different timeline where Missouri's good and loses a coach who's going to better places where they could land one of these guys. But Steve Sarkisian was the Alabama offensive coordinator and then became the Texas head coach. And this past year went 12-2 with a trip to the college football playoff. So he's been successful, would have been great at Mizzou probably, had a little bit of baggage, but again, I think was in the Alabama coach rehabilitation program.
He was destined for something bigger.
Exactly. He was waiting out a top tier job, which Texas, as much as he probably had to undertake a rebuild as much as you would ever expect Texas to do.
Yeah.
But they're doing well now, moving to the SEC. The other one is Mike Norvell, who was at Memphis at the time, took over at Florida State, went 10-3 2 years ago, and most recently, obviously, famously went undefeated, didn't make the playoff, quarterback got hurt, got beat by 60 to Georgia.
Yeah. He had kind of a rough first year at Florida State, if I remember correctly, but man, yeah, he really has righted that ship, and when you find a good quarterback and it all comes together, but yeah, I think that would have been a strong hire, probably more realistic than Sarkisian was, but still probably destined for something bigger.
Does that match how you have it in your mind as far as the Mizzou job not being that desirable at the time? We were felt like as we go through these names, it's like, geez, no matter who we ended up with, we were going to be settling a bit.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the theme of a lot of these guys that we're going to talk about is like someone who is coming from like kind of a mid-major program and maybe has had like an okay career. Recruiting probably not going to be super exciting, and the fan base is probably not going to be very excited either. It's not going to be a big name.
Yeah. The only other big name, I mean, there's a couple more, but Lane Kiffin maybe is the only one that was like seemed fairly reasonable.
Yeah.
And that kind of matches up with what actually happened. He was the head coach at FAU and then went to Ole Miss, and they just this past season had an 11-2 season. So that kind of tracks with what Drinkwitz did, and you could see the parallels there.
I do think, I mean, that was 5 years ago, but I do feel like Lane Kiffin actually had a little bit more steam. And like, I remember actually considering this guy might be our coach. What do I think about it?
Yeah.
But I think he went to Ole Miss the same, was it the same?
I think so.
Like carousel time period?
I believe so.
But yeah, he's done really well there.
It's just so nice to like, obviously the reason we're having this conversation, maybe we would have anyway if things were going poorly, but to be able to go, okay, yeah, these three guys were big names, but you know, Norvell and Florida State, maybe they should have, but they haven't made the playoff yet. And Steve Sarkisian did what you're kind of supposed to as a head coach at Texas.
Yeah.
And be at the top of your game. And then now let's see what happens in the SEC.
Yeah.
But it just feels so good to be at a place where we're like, yes, these coaches could have achieved the same thing Coach Drinkwitz did.
Yeah.
And that is...
You wouldn't trade what's happened.
No.
I don't think you would.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, any other names that jump out to you? Maybe more the higher profile guys from that time?
I feel like that's kind of like its own tier of like big names, maybe some guys with a little bit of baggage who had been around the block in other locations, other coaching positions, and had maybe, had to leave because of certain circumstances or whatever.
It's kind of crazy that Lane Kiffin is still only 48 years old.
Yeah. I mean, he was a head coach of an NFL team, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't he the head coach of the Raiders?
Yeah. And
That's
he
wild.
was the head coach at USC at one point, right?
Maybe
I can't
offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, he's had some high profile
Head coach
jobs.
at Tennessee, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Was he?
insane. Yeah.
Head coach at Tennessee?
Yeah.
Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
Wow, I've already forgotten about
Forever
that.
ago, he said, famous soundbite, he said, he's looking forward to singing Rocky Top all night long after we beat Alabama
That's
or
right.
whatever. He said, I can't remember what the team was.
Yeah,
but
he's, he is,
must have started coaching when he was like 19.
well, yeah, he must be an impressive guy. I don't know, like super sharp with his offensive game planning or something. I don't know. He's got something going for him.
Yeah. He's settled in at Ole Miss, it seems like. There was, chatter of him leaving Ole Miss this past offseason, but that didn't materialize. Brian Harsin is a name that got thrown around a little bit. He was at Boise State at the time and went on to spend 1.5 seasons at Auburn before getting fired, and just like seeming like from the outside that the program was falling apart around him at some points.
Well, I remember thinking that was never a good fit.
Yeah.
Really. I don't know Brian Harsin personally, but I think you could just tell, like, going from, a lot of like kind of Pacific Northwest ties. He'd been really successful at Boise State, but didn't really build that program either. Kind of inherited a successful program. Kind of had been rumored to be a difficult guy to work with, like maybe a little arrogant, maybe. I mean, probably a lot of these guys are, but maybe him especially so. And so his jump from Boise State all the way to Auburn, I think everybody knew that maybe wasn't the best cultural fit, but I definitely thought he was interesting for Missouri at the time, though.
Did defeat Eli Drinkwitz and the Missouri Tigers.
Thank you, Nathaniel Pete.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was mean to single him out, but
Yeah.
I'm still hurt.
Yeah. So that is 1 point for him that he did defeat the Missouri Tigers before he got fired. A name that I kind of liked, but it felt like it was never going to happen, was Jim McElwain.
You liked him?
I like it. The thing with Jim McElwain.
Shark.
Yeah. You can't mention Jim McElwain without thinking about Him in the back of that boat.
The legendary photo. Was it him? Was it not? It doesn't matter.
I feel like we did a off-air investigation into that at one point, and there was like a gentleman who came forward saying, yeah, well, stretching the word
A
there.
witness.
There was a guy who said, no, that was me. That was me
Oh,
with
really?
the shark. Yeah. If you don't know what we're talking about, just Google
Surely.
Jim McElwain's shark.
Yeah, don't do it at work or anything though.
There was a guy who like came forward and was like, no, I am the shark guy.
Okay.
But it may be.
Maybe he just wanted
I
attention.
feel like at the time I remember thinking, I thought this is fake. This is a cover up. Like Jim McElwain like paid this guy to do this. To
well, if
get
it
the heat off him.
happened today, I would have said it's AI generated.
Yeah,
and I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah, that's one benefit of AI is like if there's a like incriminating photo out
To say
of
it's
you,
fake.
yeah, naked laying next to a shark in the back of a boat, you can just say that's AI.
But you liked him though.
I did. He's been at Central Michigan now for 5 seasons. In 2021, they went 9-4. That's the best season there. So
Yeah, I feel like that would have been like a and I feel like that's kind of still how I feel about it.
obviously he was previously at Florida and then he got fired. I thought I did actually go back and listen to our episode where we were talking about some of these guys, and I had mentioned the 2 Clemson co-offensive coordinators, and they both have gone on to take head coaching jobs since after leaving Clemson. Jeff Scott, I actually don't have what school he's at.
He is at UCF.
He's
USF.
He's at
I'm sorry.
USF.
USF,
South Florida. But I do have written down that in his 3 seasons there, he's gone 1-8, 2-10, and 1-8.
Well, I was gonna say he's getting steadily better, but then
Yeah.
you threw a wrench in that.
Yeah.
Well,
So
that's not very good. That's
not doing
4
so hot.
wins in 3 years.
Yeah, not the best. And then the other co-offensive coordinator from the time, Tony Elliott, is now the head coach at Virginia, and he's gone. Maybe Wikipedia is failing me because these numbers don't add up. He's gone 3-7 and 3-9 in his 2 seasons
At Virginia.
at Virginia.
Well, maybe these guys just had Trevor Lawrence, and they didn't. It was all Trevor Lawrence. That was
At Clemson, yeah.
that was carrying them.
Yeah. They did have a pretty solid stretch there of
Yeah, they
incredible
rolled with
quarterbacks.
Deshaun Watson too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Feel free to jump in with any names that I'm
Oh, I've got
missing.
plenty.
Here. Okay. Give me some.
How about Jeff Monken?
Jeff Monken. Now, that was one of the names that was actually rumored to be on Jim Sturck's short list that he was bringing to the board of curators.
We got right into the meat and potatoes.
So
Didn't we?
he's got to have a good resume. What can you tell me about him?
He likes a triple option.
That's right.
He's been at every school basically in college football that runs the triple option, like
Yes.
Georgia Tech, Georgia Southern,
Mhm.
and then Army. He's been at Army for 10 years now. But that was the thought at the time, was like, okay, yeah, he's a winner, I guess. He's been successful at these stops, but he's literally never gone anywhere where he hasn't had to run the triple option.
Yeah.
Does that mean Missouri's going to run the triple option
Yeah. Yeah.
if they
Just-
hired him?
I would love to know if that had crossed Jim Sturck's mind. Like, what was the conversation there? Like, do you go ask him, like, hey, can you do anything else? Can you run another offense?
Surely.
You-
Surely they had to. Somebody
you have to
asked him.
bring that up to him, right?
Of course. Well, I mean, he's been decently good at Army.
Yeah.
Historically, Army is probably not a great football program. They
Yeah.
did beat us in a bowl game
True.
in whenever that was, probably
Yeah.
2021.
Something like that.
But yeah, it's like, how has he still been at Army for 10 years? It's because he can't answer that question.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to take a chance on anything else, on him running anything else.
Yeah. And like, what do you even do there? He's the head coach, and then you let the offensive coordinator have their own offense that's not the triple option. I don't know how you're going to get
Yeah.
recruits to Mizzou running the triple option.
That was never going to work.
But I feel like that factored in. The fact that he was one of the 3 names factored into just like feeling
Like,
this is not
what are you
going
doing?
well.
Yeah.
One of the names that I really liked at the time and I still like him, and I've pulled for him and wished him success on this podcast, is Willie Fritz. And he felt to me like he would have been a safe hire. He's got ties to the area. Recruiting questionable, but that's pretty much everybody on this list.
I feel like but yeah, exactly. That's there's so many coaches that fit that bill of like somewhere down in the South, they've been pretty good for a while, and they're like hard-nosed. They have hard-nosed teams and stuff like that, but they don't recruit that well.
Yeah.
And yeah, Willie Fritz is like the epitome of that.
Yeah.
And I agree. It would have been like, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and seeing what has happened with him,
You were maybe onto something.
well, it's like, again, everything changes with the fact that we are coming off an 11-win season with Drink. But Willie Fritz, his last 2 years at Tulane, went 12-2 and 11-2, and then was recently hired to take over the head coaching position at Houston, which feels like and Houston now entering the Big 12.
That makes a lot of sense for him.
Yeah, so feels like a normal, very standard career trajectory for him. He is a bit older, so feels like coming to Mizzou at the time or this jump to Houston, he wants it to be his last go around, I would say.
Yeah, which is probably attractive to an athletic director who's making a hire.
And there were rumors at the time that he was going to say yes if Mizzou offered him the job. So there's something to be said for that. If you just like know a guy's going to say yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say of everybody we've talked about so far, outside of maybe like Lane Kiffin, that probably would have been one of the better hires.
Yeah, one of the better ones
Realistically?
of people that would have said yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with
Realistically,
that. Yeah.
yes.
Give me somebody you like.
Okay, here's a very polarizing name from 2019. Like we thought Coach Drinkwitz was like inexperienced and like we're taking a risk on a young guy. How about Will Healy? He was the head coach at Charlotte in 2019. He was 34 years old.
Wow.
That's very young.
Yeah.
And he was just like this. He was seen as this up and comer, like very just high energy. Recruiting is going to be there, and then just we'll figure it all out after that. Well, things kind of went sour for him at Charlotte after this. He just didn't get hired anywhere in 2019, which I think his name was kind of a hot name in a lot of coaching searches around that time.
Yeah.
He never ended up going anywhere else. He was fired from Charlotte in 2022. He is now the advisor to the head coach at UCF,
Okay.
senior offensive analyst.
That's a mouthful.
I mean, that is some gibberish.
Yeah.
That's basically like, yeah, we don't really trust you to do anything. Right? Am I right?
I mean, yeah, it's like,
I wouldn't even heard of anything like that.
yeah.
Is that like the guy on the sideline that's like, hey, coach, call a timeout?
I feel like if I had to guess, I feel like he's in the booth a few seats down from the offensive coordinator, and he's like, has a section of the playbook that he's responsible for deciding how effective it is or something.
Yeah, probably.
There's all those guys in the booth when they
that's
show the offensive coordinator.
That's exactly what I was just thinking
Yeah.
about. Like, what are all those guys doing?
They must each have a couple guys that they watch.
One
or
guy's like
something.
the snack guy. Like, hey, I'm hungry.
Yes.
Go get a snack.
Yes.
Are they all talking on their headphones and stuff?
No
Just that
way.
one big like
Can't have
group
all-
chat party.
You can't have that much chatter up there.
I agree. Well, anyways, Will Healy was a name where it was like kind of tantalizing at the time. It was like, this guy could be the next big thing, or also he might be the next advisor to the head coach,
Yeah.
executive offensive analyst at UCF.
Yeah. I feel like any of the young guys, there was that like just the idea of the potential that they could be something.
Yeah, I mean, a Missouri in 2019 doesn't have the money or like the prestige to go get a Lane Kiffin or a Mike Norvell. So yeah, that's what you're trying to do is get the next Lane Kiffin before it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. We should mention the guy that Missouri fired, Barry Odom. Obviously, we know he became the defensive coordinator at Arkansas and had some success and was able to parlay that into the head coaching job at UNLV. I can't remember what they did last year at UNLV.
I think they were decent.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they beat Arkansas.
That actually sounds right. Or at least it was a close game. I can't remember if they pulled that off.
I think they did.
Producer Cameron, do you think you could find out if UNLV beat Arkansas in football this past year?
I'll go look.
I still think that's like kind of a funny mix, is like Barry Odom like coaching a football team in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Like just the personality mix is really funny.
Well,
But maybe he's maybe I'm just not understanding who Barry Odom is.
I'll tell you who Barry Odom is. Barry Odom is the type of guy who will ride a live bull as part of a football fundraiser. Do you want to hear more about that?
I do.
UNLV coach Barry Odom to ride live bull for football fundraiser. This is from news3lasvegas.com. Barry Odom is ready to grab the bull by the horn, so to speak. The Rebels head coach will ride a live bull this Saturday, March 2nd, as part of the Horns and Helmets fundraiser at South Point. Barry Odom said, #hold on tight. I can do anything for 8 seconds.
Wow. That sounds like something I'd like to see.
Will it be televised? Surely we will be able to see footage of it
For
after the
8
fact.
seconds.
Yeah. That's all. That's how long you have to stay on the
It's
bull.
like the Kentucky Derby. You know, you watch the pregame stuff all day, and then you watch the race for 2 minutes.
Yeah,
That happens.
that's what you do.
I've done it
Okay.
What year?
last year, like this most previous football season.
Arkansas and who?
UNLV.
I don't see that.
How about the year before?
Maybe I'm misremembering.
They played each other.
Did they? Now I've got a like Stockholm syndrome or something.
I
now.
don't see it 2022 either.
That's what you have. That explains this situation.
What is Stockholm syndrome?
Stockholm syndrome is like when you. I think it's actually been debunked. If I'm being honest, I think it's people are starting to think it's not a thing, but it's like when you fall in love with your captor or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think I have that.
Okay. Do you have the game that you're talking about?
No,
I don't either.
I can't find it. I don't think it
neither.
happened.
They played Vanderbilt. They beat Vanderbilt or something.
Maybe.
Oh my gosh.
Dang.
That'll be it.
No.
Ah,
I didn't play.
Missouri lost to
Vanderbilt.
Florida.
Missouri lost. Okay.
Yeah.
By
Well, anyway,
9.
sorry about that. All that.
I don't think you're completely wrong here, though. They
beat,
played
you
somebody.
Know, they beat somebody.
Yeah. Say it in the comments. You want to say another coach?
Yeah, let's move on. All right, how about Dave Clawson?
Okay.
He was the coach at Wake Forest.
Yeah.
I saw at the time his salary was basically $2.2 million,
Wow.
which I thought seemed pretty high for the coach at Wake Forest. But he's still there. He's still at Wake Forest after all this time.
Mm-hmm.
They also beat Missouri in a bowl game. It's like all these coaches getting their revenge. They beat Missouri in a bowl game in, what was that, 2022?
Yeah.
And
Gasparilla.
They've been pretty solid.
UNLV beat Vanderbilt last year.
Let's
Okay.
go. Let's go.
Somebody.
Close enough.
That's not as cool as
No.
beating Arkansas.
Right.
But I'm sure they would have if
Yes,
they played.
for sure. Yeah, Wake Forest had an 11-3 season in 2021. And yeah, I feel like I would have been happy with that hire.
I
But-
think I remember thinking like pretty solid hire.
Yeah, but then the buyout stuff, I feel like with his salary and he had just like got a contract extension or
Wake
something.
Forest knew.
Yeah.
They knew he was good.
Didn't that also happen with their basketball coach? This is a research heavy episode, but I feel like last coaching
Danny Manning?
No, I'll tell you.
He was the coach there, right?
Wake Forest coming full circle. Kyle Filipowski from the intro. The court storming, Steve Forbes.
Oh, yeah.
And his name was linked to Mizzou a little bit, but then Wake Forest extended him and his
They
buyout
just
was kind
know
of crazy.
they know when they have something good.
Yeah,
Demon Deacons.
exactly. Dave Clawson, though, yeah, I'll put a star by his name. He's a guy that
Yeah,
would have been successful at Mizzou.
I agree.
Would any of these guys, which of these guys would have landed Luther Burden, though?
That's a good question. I mean, that's really where Drinkwitz has elevated Mizzou in a way that like probably none of these guys would have done.
Yeah.
And so therefore maybe none of these guys are successful.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, how about Chris Creighton?
Never heard of him.
He was the coach at Eastern Michigan. Probably was a little bit more appealing in 2019 than he is now. He's still at Eastern Michigan
Okay.
and has a career record there of 52-68. So I think he must have had a good first couple of years there. Looked like it may be a guy that could make the jump, didn't, and has just kind of stalled out.
Yeah. I obviously didn't consider him very seriously because I don't remember anything about him. Chris Creighton, he was there though. Was he there when, was it Eastern Michigan that Missouri and Drew Lock put up 1 million points?
That
against?
was Eastern Michigan. I don't know if he was there then. 52-68. That's
Yeah.
I mean that's probably what, 6 or 7 seasons.
Started there in 2014.
10 years. Wow.
Yeah.
So he would have been there.
That's probably why I disregarded him.
Yeah. You
Can't
don't want to
let
bring
that
that.
happen.
No. Yeah. Okay, Cameron. Here's a guy that had been around the block a lot. I kind of feel like at the time I remember thinking he was kind of like smoke and mirrors. Maybe could get something going, but I wasn't really sold.
Okay.
That's Sonny Dykes.
Oh, okay.
He was the head coach at SMU
Mm-hmm.
in 2019 and had some success there.
Yeah.
He then took the job at TCU.
Right.
They went to the national championship game
Yeah.
and lost by infinity
True.
to Georgia.
Yeah.
But that's still very impressive.
Yes.
To get to the national championship game at TCU.
So he'll be going into his 3rd year at TCU this coming season?
I think so. And
Yeah.
they were not very good this past year.
No,
I don't know if they did kind of like a sell your soul situation.
probably.
And
We're not doing that here
I hope not.
because we haven't made the national championship game yet.
Exactly.
Yeah. TCU, I remember the big game early this past season, TCU versus Colorado.
Yeah.
And it was a huge deal that Colorado got that win, but didn't. Yeah. It was more of an indictment on TCU.
Yeah.
But consider me as someone who would have accepted him as the head coach of Mizzou.
Yeah. I could have lived with that for sure.
I actually only have one more name on my list that I want to save for last.
Okay. We talked about Billy Napier in 2019. He was the head coach at Louisiana. Just finished his 2nd season at Florida.
Right.
Again, lunch pail guy,
Yes.
like hard-nosed teams, can't recruit.
Good X's and O's.
That's exactly what's happened to Florida.
Yeah.
And he looks like he'll probably be going into his 3rd season on the hot seat.
Yeah, and I've been a kind of a Billy Napier guy. I've felt like he will be successful at Florida, but
He's still good.
I'd
It takes time.
be okay with being proven wrong on that.
All right, a guy that I feel like we knew was probably a pipe dream at the time, but we're still absolutely would have said yes to is Luke Fickell. He was the head coach at Cincinnati.
Yeah.
They made the college football playoff
Sheesh.
one of those years, I think when he was there.
Yeah, with the quarterback that's in the
with
NFL now that's bad at Atlanta.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Desmond
who-
Ridder.
Desmond Ritter.
Yeah.
They also had Sauce Gardner,
Ooh, yeah.
Jerome Ford, some of those guys.
Sheesh.
They got smoked by Alabama in the first round, but that's what everybody does.
Right.
Still incredibly impressive to go undefeated and then make the playoff at Cincinnati. He's now at Wisconsin.
Do you know how they're doing?
I think they're all right.
Yeah, it kind of felt like at the time he was waiting out like his dream job, basically. He was
He did
going to
it.
be able to pick his spot, more
Yep.
or less.
Yep, and I think he did that to some extent. We already talked about Willie Fritz.
It'd be interesting to see Willie Fritz at Houston, see how they do.
Yeah, he makes a lot of sense there. Got a couple more names here.
Okay.
A couple, and I feel like these names probably were less talked about then, but Skip Holtz was head coach at Louisiana Tech.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure he was one of the 3.
Oh,
One of the Jim Sturk 3.
well, okay, then I take back what I said.
Yeah, I think
We were hot and heavy with him.
Yeah, again, this was
Okay.
Yeah,
Was this the name you were saving for last?
no.
Okay. Well, I would be willing to bet a lot of money. You did not know where Skip Holtz was coaching
Not before today.
because he is coaching in the USFL.
Of course.
The Birmingham Stallions is who he is
Incredible.
coaching right now.
Wow.
So you said there is a relation to Lou Holtz.
Yeah.
He actually had a decent track record in 2019. Had been several places and had been decently successful at each of those stops. But just was not somebody that really blew you away at all.
No. And he would have been coming over from Louisiana Tech, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think he would have been there whenever Missouri played them a couple of years ago.
No, according to Wikipedia, he was fired after the 2021 season when they went 3-9.
And then they hired Sonny
Cumby.
Wow. Okay, how about Troy Calhoun?
Air Force.
What do you know about him? Okay, that's correct. Yeah, he's been there for a while. He's still there.
Okay.
Kind of one of those like service academy things. Like once you get that job, you just have it. You just have it for a while. Have it till you don't want it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Last guy on my list is Bill Clark.
Bill Clark.
Coach at UAB.
Yes.
He eventually resigned from back problems.
He resigned from back problems? Like
he
had back problems and then he resigned from them?
I think eventually he did, yes, but he resigned because he had back problems.
I see.
And then he went on to resign from the back problems.
Well, that's good for him.
Yeah.
Bill Clark.
So I'd be willing to say Eli Drinkwitz greater than pretty much all those guys.
What about the guy who was the closest of anybody else to being the Mizzou football head coach if it wasn't Eli Drinkwitz? And that is Blake Anderson. Blake Anderson was one of the Jim Sturk 3 and the leader by all accounts, by the accounts of all the rumors. He was the guy that Jim Sturk brought to the board and wanted to extend an offer to. He was the head coach at Arkansas State at the time, and most recently is the head coach at Utah State. First year at Utah State, they went 11-3. Last 2 years, back-to-back 6 and 7 seasons.
Yeah, I feel like my feelings on Blake Anderson are basically exactly what they were in 2019. Like, I'm not sure I would have been like furious if they hired him, but it definitely was not who I was hoping for.
Right.
And like we probably would have been fine. We probably would have just continued on the path that we were on with Barry Odom.
Yeah.
Just, fighting for mediocrity. Probably he's a decent coach, seems like a good guy, but was not like anything that was going to push us over the edge.
Yeah, it's honestly kind of crazy how many of these guys, if they had been the head coach, we would have been so reliant on who they hire as offensive and defensive coordinator. It's how it feels. And maybe we got a little bit of that with Drinkwitz just because he only had 1 year of head coaching experience at the time. It was very much like, well, let's see who he gets as coordinator. You're probably going to want coordinators who have some head coaching experience and that sort of thing.
Well, then we went through, 2-3 seasons of Coach Drinkwitz trying to do it all himself?
Yes.
Like, this was the first season of him having another offensive coordinator.
Yeah. Not calling the plays. Yeah.
And just immediately we're great.
Yes.
And obviously, that had to do with the talent that we have also. Yeah. But, we struggled for a while because, he was trying to be the OC. And so I wonder, what that would have looked like with somebody else.
Yeah. Listening back to our coaching search podcast from back then, one name that actually I didn't have his name, but he was the LSU coming off national championship. He was the LSU passing game coordinator, Joe Brady, who actually didn't know it at the time, but he went on to be the offensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers when they hired the guy that's at Nebraska now that was at Baylor.
I'll think of it.
He was the Panthers head coach, and now I can't think of him.
Matt Rule.
Thank you.
Matt Ja Rule.
Yes, Matt Ja Rule and Joe Brady were in Carolina, and I threw out Joe Brady as offensive coordinator. This, just go with me here.
You would have nailed it.
I wanted recently retired due to health stuff, Mark Richt, who was at Georgia and Miami, but then stepped away because of health stuff. I wanted him to be head coach, I wanted him to bring in former Texas head coach Charlie Strong as defensive coordinator and Joe Brady as offensive coordinator.
Wow. Now that would have been quite the operation.
Yes. Now,
I mean, Joe Brady's gone on to like do impressive things like in the NFL.
yeah,
He is with the Bills now.
Panthers offense was bad,
That's
but
true.
that was not really his fault. Yeah.
I believe he's the OC for the Bills now.
I think you're right. Yeah. Mark Richt, though, not funny at all, unfortunately, diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Oh,
So he's nowhere near coaching
I did not know that.
recently. So, yeah. But that was my idea of like a creative conglomerate of former, like head coach. I thought that sort of combination could work. I wanted to see a little bit more creativity out of the search firm.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah, it
feels
was-
like over and over again, it's just like, I don't know, we got to find the next up and comer.
Yeah.
And it just feels like such a roll of the dice.
Yeah. It was truly amazing that like Jim Sturk and whoever, the search committee came to the board of curators
Yeah.
with Blake Anderson and
Yeah.
these jokesters. And
Yeah.
they were just like, no,
Right.
we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about this last week. We were talking about board of curators and athletic director stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one of those times where the board stepped in and maybe, took things into their own hands in a way
Took
that,
the bull by the horns.
yes, Barry Odom would appreciate that if he had been around still. But yeah, it's like, well, they did that then, and we would all agree that that was the correct thing to do.
Yeah.
So-
And explains maybe why those entities are pretty tight still.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And we just come full circle to last week.
Wow, can't say anything more then. We just got to end it there.
But Eli Drinkwitz greater than how many, like 90%, 95% of these names?
Yeah, especially, I mean, if you narrow it down to people who would have actually said yes to the job potentially, I mean, I'm not sure there's very many names on this list that would have gone 500
Yeah.
3 years in a row, let alone pull off an 11-win season.
Basically, you're saying you would not trade what's happened for any of these coaches, realistically. I agree.
And then you're just like, okay, well, we give up what actually happened, but Lane Kiffin has been the coach this whole time. Do we even get it? Well, we've
Yeah.
got an 11-win season.
You maybe profit there.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, it would only be like Sarkisian, Kiffin, and Mike Norvell that I would even
Yeah.
entertain that with.
What are you hoping for with Lane Kiffin? You want a jump start in recruiting and maybe have a 10-win season.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what happened
Yeah, exactly.
in real life.
Yeah. Yeah. Drinkwitz all day. Drink up.
Drink up.
I actually just thought of something that I wanted to talk about spring practice.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Fire away.
I just want everybody to picture this for a second. Close your eyes, if you will.
Okay.
All spring long, we have out there on the practice field a healthy Brady Cook practicing the plays and the routes with Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, Mookie Cooper, Marquise Johnson. All the wide receivers are back. Brady Cook is healthy. You can just see it. They're running that fade to Theo Weiss. He's turning around, going up, getting the ball out of the air over and over again. They could both do it blindfolded now. Brady Cook is launching deep ball after deep ball into the outstretched arms of Luther Burden and Marquise Johnson. Mookie Cooper's running routes over the middle. That's happening all spring long. This offense is poised for big things.
Can I open my eyes yet?
Coming soon, yes. Open your eyes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, hopefully if you were driving, you didn't close your eyes or anything. That was awesome, though. That was great.
Thank
you
you.
really put me in the, like,
You
I
could
felt like
picture
I
it.
was right there in the practice
Yeah.
facility. Also, because I saw some of those very things on Twitter earlier today that helped.
Yeah.
I saw some clips of Brady Cook throwing dimes to Luther Burden.
Just think about the continuity.
I mean, the separation, though, like even in practice,
Yeah.
he was just running like a slant, and he was like 10 yards away from the defender.
Yeah.
He's good.
Man.
He's really good.
Honestly, though, the connection that Cook and Theo Weiss already had on some of those sideline timing throws and end zone throws.
They're going to do it again.
Ooh, everybody on the same page. Just got to hope that running back room is serviceable.
I think Marcus Carroll,
Yeah.
he's going to be ready.
Yeah.
He's going to be ready for the workload.
Offensive line's going to be great. Spring practice is going to be so fun.
Yeah.
Every little nugget that we learn about the team is going to get me more hyped.
We're building. We're building the foundation
Yes.
already.
Yeah. That's it, I guess, for this week.
That's it.
I wouldn't trade anybody
Wouldn't trade it.
for Coach Drink.
#thankful.
Yep. Grab the bull by the horns. Special thank you to our Patreon supporters at the $10 level and above. Britt Treese, Brian Smith, Ryan Demore, Tristan, Ben Smith, Parker Daddy, JD, Tim Keens, Tyler Harsel, Brandon Groffalo, Brandon Hanks, Matthew Tilley, Luis Hernandez, Joshua Jacobson. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We love you very much. You can find this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or on Twitter at Mizzou Sports Pod, and you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
You can find our t-shirts and stickers on our online shop, MissouriSportsPod.BigCartel.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next week.